Welcome to the Drive Time News Blast. 30 minutes, 45 for patrons. Jam-packed with news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. This is Monica Perez.
And I'm Brad Binkley.
Our top story today, front page of the Wall Street Journal. Researchers begin to home in on COVID-19 mortality rate. That wasn't the exact headline, but something like that. And as I read into it, it looks like the mortality rate for COVID is about 0.5%, which isn't really that impressive. I think that's for all cases though, and most cases are asymptomatic. So I don't even think it's a particularly valid number. But as I go back and try to figure out my own numbers on this thing, I have noticed increasingly, as have other people, that the CDC data is amazingly sparse. It's totally behind. It's inconsistent year to year. They just don't have all their blanks filled in. And now when the White House is going to take over for collecting the data and feeding it, stovepiping it perhaps to the CDC, I think that we will never really be able to know the truth. But I'm not impressed by a 0.5% mortality rate, especially since the vast majority of the people, I think, well, they all have comorbidities. So that just means those people were terminally ill already.
Now, this came from the CDC?
The Wall Street Journal, no. The Wall Street Journal said researchers are getting close to this number, and it cites just kind of hodgepodge of different data sets and people working on it, and they're all kind of homing in on this 0.5 to 1% rate.
Yeah, that was the subject of Trump's interview with Chris Wallace the other day. And Chris Wallace combated what Trump said. Trump said we're the best in the world at, I think we have the lowest, I believe is what he said.
We should have the lowest.
Kaylee came out, but it turns out they were citing different sources, and that has now become a point of confusion.
That's exactly what's been happening the whole time. I've always thought Johns Hopkins is what was listed. I can't remember who wrote it. Was it the Wall Street Journal or was it actually, I believe it was an official source, called Johns Hopkins the gold standard for COVID data, which is absolutely crazy since we have a CDC that is supposed to be our gold standard. And if you're an internationalist, look at the World Health Organization. But our CDC is supposed to be the gold standard. It's all very confusing. But I would say we should have the lowest mortality rate because we have the highest case rate and we have the highest testing rate. So as you test more people and you include people who don't have the disease, you should have the mortality rate. It should, strictly speaking, be limited to people who definitely have the disease, which is not the same as getting a positive test. But I would furthermore say the relevant mortality rate is for people in the general population who are not already terminally ill, in which case the mortality rate is probably unmeasurably small.
Right. It's confusing on so many levels, not just where the data comes from, but how it's calculated, which test was taken. There's so many different tests you can take. You can do a quick test. You can do a test that takes longer. You can do a test that's going to be negative, and someone will still say, well, you're positive. I just decided. It's all so confusing that the average person trying to live their life doesn't have the time or brain energy to figure all of this out. I don't. It's maddening.
I do have it, or I'm interested enough in it to make the time, and the data is not there. I can analyze data, and I cannot get the apples to apples data from a source that is accountable and transparent that can compare. And it stopped. I mean, some of this data stopped at the end of March on the CDC website. And then some of it is missing the year over year stuff from 2019. The monthly data from 2019, but they have some for 2020. I'm telling you, I posted 3 CDC links yesterday on Twitter at Monica Perez Show, and you look and see that there is no consistency in the reporting by weeks, years over the past 3 years. And frankly, I'd like to include 2017, which at least in Europe, which is not the data that they provide, but in Europe, 2017 had a terrible flu season. If we compare 2020 with 2017, I would expect to find that 2017 was worse.
The confusion around all of this, in my opinion, is on purpose. It is to keep the public overwhelmed, uncertain, and dependent on the word of the authorities. If the public overall can't figure out who to trust or what the real numbers are, then that gives more and more power to the authorities that they look to get their information from.
I asked my husband if he's a good manager, and I asked him how he would handle this if he were in charge, the governor, whatever. And he said, well, the first thing I would not have done is panic everybody immediately before any of the facts were in, because now you can't do anything because people are so scared. So if you wanted to open the schools, people are in a frenzy, they're in a panic, they won't allow it. It's creating confusion, resistance, and you just cannot control it now. Once you cause the panic, you kind of set your path, which of course I think is deliberate. He doesn't.
Right.
But
yeah. The way that these globalists work is they have, a lot of times we do things, we don't always necessarily plan them out as well in our head or have as much broad-ranging goals as we might like to have, because it's hard to do that when you're trying to live day to day and get by. But these guys and gals, they can sit up in their ivory towers in the sky. They can pinpoint an objective on a map and say, I want this goal in 10 years to happen. So what do we have to do to make this reality come into fruition? And if causing chaos is part of the best way to get to that, in their opinion, then chaos would be the plan.
They have scenario experts. Global Business Network was the scenario expert. These guys had their history dates all the way back to the 60s and counterculture stuff that they did hand in hand with the CIA. The Global Business Network ran the 4 scenarios for the Rockefeller Foundation in 2010 of how varying pictures of the future would affect their ability to insert technology into poorer countries. I mean, that's what that was all about. And don't tell me, I mean, now my eyes are open about technology. It is for the world powers, for the control. So they have those foundations. They're tax-exempt foundations. They do not have a rule against perpetuity, so they're intergenerational. They have unlimited resources, virtually unlimited resources relative to any individual or truly private organization to anticipate not only the different scenarios, but these experts who understand crowd psychology. They have all the resources, all the experts to determine what technology is capable of, how crowds will respond, how different cultures will respond. They have that. They, THEY, Rockefeller Foundation specifically, World Economic Forum. There's an article I wanted to get to today. I doubt I will. Written by a guy from the Open Society Foundation, but I took a while to find that. It was in Market Watch about how Americans should all have free Federal Reserve bank accounts to have their UBI directly deposited into. It was just a Soros propaganda thing. So they're there and they can study this stuff. They can anticipate it. They can set goals and they can roll with the punches.
Yeah. And the public overall, we project our morals, what we would do, onto them. We think like us instead of thinking like them, which is why we don't think that they would do something like cause chaos, but they are not restricted or bound by the way that we think or the beliefs and morals that we have.
That's almost a direct quote from Brzezinski, who said in 1971 or 2 in America in the Technotronic era that the elite would not be bound by provincial or traditional ethics, and they depend on us restraining our own behavior and our own perceptions by that which they operate outside of. Human hunting parties, which I never believed was a real thing, I now believe is a real thing. But I will say they also use policy. A policy is very effective. That was from a report from Iron Mountain. They can use computer simulations to see how policy will affect the tiniest details of seemingly unrelated things in society. But in this case, the policy details are very clearly related to the outcomes. Specifically, I was talking about yesterday, somebody had told me, and I'd read propositions. I don't know if they got passed, but I figure they did, based on what people have told me, that they are insulating from liability the changed policies or people, medical workers implementing policies in the New York, New Jersey area, policies I think are largely responsible for those accelerated death rates in nursing homes. But I had a comment on that, one of those YouTube videos I do with Clint on my YouTube channel. A guy named, what was his name? Save the Planet, Eat a Vegan. But he predicted to give him credit, that the liability would be imparted to businesses that require mask usage. And I would also say maybe vax tats. So I feel like that, like for live events, if you have your vax tat and they require it, it's not the government mandating it, but that venue would be taking on the liability of having a show, but they don't have to have the liability if they require vaccinations. It's not that they don't have liability if no harm is done, or they do have liability if harm is done. That's the problem with how medical liability works. It's not about harm or judgment or intent or anything like regular tort law. It's just following protocol, which is manipulated from the top without being in good faith. So I do believe that they're going to manipulate policy. That's their nudging without actually mandating.
Yeah. Well, it appears Trump might have been nudged or mandated, judging by his press conference yesterday. Did you see the coronavirus task force press conference yesterday?
All I saw was a headline that said, Trump says this thing's going to get worse before it gets better. And that just echoed in my mind Bill Gates, thank you, Mr. A, friend of the show, when he said phase 2 was really going to get people's attention.
If you would just read the transcript and not see a name attached to this, you might think that it was Fauci that was up there speaking. It was a complete reversal on absolutely everything. He looked defeated. It was a man on an island telling a country that's gripped by a pandemic exactly what the experts have been telling them, and nothing that he's been saying. And
was he wearing a mask?
Not when he was doing the press conference. He was far away from people. He was sitting by himself. There was no, like I said, he was on an island. Trump on an island in a mask would have been better, but he wasn't wearing a mask. He was just sitting by himself. There was none of the almighty scientists were behind him. In fact, during this press conference where he's talking to America about this problem that has gripped us for so long, CNN wasn't even airing the entire press conference. What they were doing at the time is Jake Tapper had Fauci on his show, and he's talking to Fauci. Were you not invited to the coronavirus press conference is going on right now? How dare he not invite you, Mr. Lord Fauci? And Fauci's like, I don't know if I wasn't invited. I just, he did his Fauci thing, and they weren't even airing it. But Trump was saying exactly what CNN's been saying for so long. And I'm going to tell you a few of the things that he said. His tone was very somber. He was kind of just reading from his desk a script the whole time, except when he was answering questions. There was no confrontation at all, even when people asked him challenging questions that he might, fight back against like he usually does. He said, wear a mask multiple times. He reiterated wear a mask. He said the pandemic is going to get worse before it gets better. He touted ventilators. He touted remdesivir, as opposed to, it was hydrochloroquine, and remdesivir is Fauci's thing. The institute that he leads has been trying to push that for a while. It's very, very expensive. It hasn't been proven to affect the death rate at all. I'm
so sick of the treatment thing. Can we not talk about basic health? It's bothering me. They should be emphasizing, like Ron Paul does, the importance of fundamental health and really think about the causes of disease, malnutrition, toxicity, radiation, and stress. You need some sunlight. I'm not saying that if you don't get sick, you shouldn't treat it, but let's emphasize how we can forestall all of this by having better health. Sorry.
I was shocked.
It just drives me crazy
to say,
because everybody,
before he was recommending medicine that doctors across the country have said, if you give it to people with zinc, I believe, at the right time, it has been very effective at helping people who are sick.
It could just be the zinc, because the zinc is part of the fundamental health preparation that you should do if you're going to be in a high stress or high risk environment.
And hydrochloroquine is very cheap, and almost everybody in the country can get it. Remdesivir is very expensive, and not a lot of people can get it. Not that it has proven to do a whole lot, unless there's been other studies come out. So that was surprising to me. Then he was asked, actually, I'll tell you about that one last. He he was asked why he doesn't wear a mask more. So you wear a mask, you say it's patriotic. The question isn't, or it's not, great job. It's why don't you wear it more? Why don't you wear it when you sleep, when you're in the shower, somebody said, we saw a picture of you not wearing it. And Trump went on a diatribe. It's patriotic. It's patriotic. I wear it here. I wear it in this situation. I wear it in that. I wear it when I'm in the elevator with the generals because I'm protecting the generals. So he's spouting the talking points.
It's so important, though.
I know, but
to understand the ritual nature of the mask.
Right. So
he's saying it's patriotic. He's not saying it's healthy.
Yeah, I know. And he's saying he's wearing it to protect others. That talking point that he has not been doing for a long time.
I have to comment on that. You want to finish?
I would like to finish through these and then comment. Yeah. He said that social distancing is common sense, and I would like for it to be a little bit further, actually. He said that. He said that he was measured in his bragging about America. Instead of saying, we're number one in this, we're number one in that, he started to say, then he stopped himself and he said, we're doing good in this. So he was very un-Trump-like in every single thing that he said. He seemed a little bit defeated, and then he said, this was a response to a question. He was asked if he thought that Ghislaine Maxwell will tell some big names, even if she is actually arrested or even alive. And Trump's response was that he wishes her well. He used to see her around a lot in West Palm Beach. Did you know she used to live in West Palm Beach, I guess? And he said he didn't know anything about the Prince Andrew situation. And he also emphasized, the only thing that he emphasized forcefully in any of this talk that he didn't seem defeated about was that it was a China virus. China unleashed this on the world. China did this to us. China did this to everybody. It was a complete reversal except for his position that we're going to war with China. We are in a Cold War with China, I guess. Or maybe it's going to be something more. But
well, wait till the defense spending fucking doubles. Which is crazy. We spend more than the rest of the world combined in defense, and they will. It's just, I mean, the only thing I can think is they're truly trying to bankrupt the country, truly trying to reset the monetary order of the world. But I had a couple of comments about the masks. So I saw an article. Who was the source of the article? Dag freaking nabbit. Oh, yeah. The Mayo Clinic. It was a guy from the Mayo Clinic said the N95 mask with the respirators, it filters the air going in, but it does not filter the air going out. And actually, if you cough or whatever, you're not covering your face when you're wearing a mask. So it can direct and accelerate or concentrate the impact of it going out. And I just had to laugh because I went to Santa Monica over the weekend, which I would never normally do because I really don't live anywhere near there. But there's no traffic here. This sojourn of living in LA, it's very different from the last one. There's no traffic. So I went to Santa Monica and I saw a sign that said, my mask is for you, your mask is for me. And I tweeted it. And I thought, this is how they can tell you what to do. Otherwise, liberty would reign. Oh my gosh. But the better the mask, the less true that is. The N95 mask is bad for you and it's good for me. So if you took it off, it would be better for the other person. It's a selfish act, not a selfless act, according to this article I was reading about N95.
And they told people not to wear those, the ones with a filter now.
Why?
Because of what you just said, because it doesn't filter.
Oh, really? So now they're changing that? Yeah. Because they were, for a while, they were pushing those masks.
Yeah,
they
were
make
saying
no
those
comment. Are the ones that really work.
I didn't see any comment on the actual mask that people are wearing that are made of cloth, that are an apparel
item. Well, they're
item.
Patriotic. They're not a medical thing. They're a political thing. That's what Trump is saying.
So patriotism must kill the coronavirus.
It would, because the coronavirus is as tangible as politics.
We need more patriotism to kill this virus.
So, but what about the Winn-Dixie thing?
Oh, Winn-Dixie, I don't even know if we got to the story yesterday, but Winn-Dixie had announced that they are going to, no mask required, they were going to go against the grain, and I was ready to become a Winn-Dixie customer until What?
And I was going to say yesterday when we got to that story, I was going to say, this is how we know there's competition in supermarkets and there's not competition in social media. Social media is a tool of the government because the mask thing, people don't like it. So Winn-Dixie is taking that competitive moment to empower its customers, give its customers what it wants, whereas you can't get that from Facebook or Twitter or whatever, which takes stuff down for political reasons, not because that's what people want. But then, I believe politics.
Winn-Dixie did a complete reversal not less than 24 hours before making the declaration. And in that reversal, they went ahead and implemented a mask policy. They did this after Trump donned the mask, after he said it was patriotic. They instantly dropped their stance and implemented a policy before their competitors implemented it. So they kowtowed. It's embarrassing, and they said they did it because of their customers. Bullshit.
Unless their customers are such Trump bobbleheads
possibly
that they themselves have done a 180. I used to say a 360. My husband would be like, a 360 gets you back where you started. Did a 180.
Hey, what's up, guys? With the world as crazy and unpredictable as it currently is, the time to start living a truly sustainable lifestyle, a lifestyle of rugged independence, is right now. And Neighbors Feed and Seed has everything you need to help you do just that. Small engine repair, garden supplies, vegetable plants, bird feed, chicken feed, premium pet food. Neighbors has it all. And right now, they want to give Propaganda Report listeners an opportunity to try one of their new products, Southern Nights CBD oil, at a 20% discount. So go to neighborsfeedandseed.com or visit the store in person if you live in the Smyrna area and use the promo code PROPREPORT. That's one word, all caps, PROPREPORT, and you'll get 20% off of your CBD oil purchase. Look, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Neighbors Feed and Seed is a fantastic business ran by friendly, knowledgeable, liberty-minded people who bend over backwards to help their customers in any way that they can. Check it out. I promise you, you're gonna love it. Quick correction, the coupon code for all CBD products is PROP, P-R-O-P, all caps, and the coupon code for the starter seed pack is PROPREPORT, all caps, no spaces. And Neighbors Feed and Seed has a farmer's market that starts at 10 a.m. and goes till 4 p.m. on Saturdays.
I wanted to mention yesterday's Patron 15. I got a comment which I feel the same way. The end of that just blew JB's mind. And it was something that had blown my mind. So I thought I would say if you were considering being a patron, if you want to sign up or if you are a patron and missed it, check out yesterday's Patron 15. And it's only $5 a month to be a truth sponge, which gets you all the Patron 15. It doesn't get you the parties, but it gets you all that extra content.
15 cents a day.
If you want it. That doesn't work for me. I can't do that. $5, it's
in
a
your cup
Starbucks
holders,
coffee.
between your couch cushions.
I like the Starbucks coffee analogy. But also somebody asked, a patron asked, what is the video I keep talking about that talks about the ritual significance of masks? And it's Truth Stream Media. It's called Characteristics of an Initiation Ritual. And they basically just read a passage from Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley's brother, that describes what's happening today in eerie similarities emerge from that. But I wanted to skip to or segue into the QAnon thing. What is this? I saw that Twitter suppressed or removed 7,000 QAnon accounts. QAnon has 7,000 accounts. QAnon followers accounts.
That's a good question. How do you determine what's a QAnon account or not? They did say Twitter removes over 7,000 QAnon accounts, but do they have QAnon in their profile, or is Twitter just projecting that they are QAnon because they said certain beliefs on their Twitter page? Yeah, they got rid of them, and they also got rid of, they're limiting the visibility of a whole bunch more, and they announced yesterday that they are banning accounts that are dedicated to the QAnon conspiracy theory and limiting the visibility of over 150,000 more. And they said they would classify the post to the conspiracy theory, which holds that Donald Trump is crusading against a clandestine ring of high-profile pedophiles, as, the reason they're doing it is because those posts related to that, they say, are in connection to offline danger. So online misinformation, they say, this is a theme we saw in 2016. This is when it emerged, causes real danger. And that's why they need to get rid of these. They said they will permanently ban accounts tweeting these topics. Some of the topics are true. This is the Pizzagate thing. When you have truth that you do not want people to talk about, you flood it with misinformation, then you ban any of those topics, despite the fact that some of them are true.
So they're protecting pedophiles?
Maybe.
But
possibly
I mean,
they are.
For sure, right? Because if the misinformation is stuff about pedophiles, and you can't tweet stories about pedophiles.
That's exactly what they're doing.
This is why I never bought the argument that the exception to the First Amendment that you can't cry fire in a crowded theater. And I would say, yes, you can. And you have to accept the consequences of that. And that, because it is a slippery slope. I hate that expression. It makes you feel so black and white, but it must be black and white. The government cannot be trusted, especially after what I talked about yesterday on the Patron 15. I mean, the nature of it all is that it's there to defeat you.
And to that story, that could not have been better news for Parler, the new social media platform that has been pushed on Twitter, strangely enough, a lot lately. But yesterday was probably, they were struggling to get some traction, I think. I think they got all the traction they needed yesterday.
So Twitter helps Parler. Fair enough.
It's probably going to be known as a QAnon platform.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Gab was Pepe. So speaking of dialectics, as we always do, it seems to me more and more clear that the George Floyd protests, which I know you have some stuff on that, was really there to launch the anti-police, then pro-police backlash. And yesterday I was talking about how I thought it said that the Department of Homeland Security was sending 150 agents into Chicago. And then I figured it had to be to protect federal property because I believe that's mostly what they have the authority to do without the approval of the local thing. I don't know if that just applies to the National Guard or Department of Homeland Security. It was just stuff I was gleaning because the purpose had not been announced as to why they would be sending them in there. But it has since been announced. It's efforts to target illegal gun sales, which I think personally is an unconstitutional expression at all.
That's why the federal officers were sent in?
Yeah. This is what it says. The Trump administration, this is in the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration plans to send federal law enforcement to Chicago as part of an effort to crack down on gun crime and focus on illegal gun sales. It's part of a broader Justice Department initiative to send a surge of federal resources into cities where crime is rising. And I would say three things about that. One is Jeff Sessions would be proud. This is one of those things that Barr and Sessions were both in on, which was use federal tools to support police and crack down on the Second Amendment, really. So I defend Jeff Sessions for his integrity, but not for his positions. And the second thing I wanted to say was that most of the press is that how it's cracking down on Democrat cities. And I thought to myself, aren't all cities Democrat cities? Like, I think cities are generally Democrats. So I looked it up, and of the 50 largest U.S. cities, 35 of them are run by Democrats. And my guess is if you cut that number to the top 25, the proportion would be even larger. That's 70%, but I bet it's even more if you really focus just on the very biggest cities. And then the last thing is these were federal agents that are dressed in fatigues without insignia, which I thought that was illegal. I didn't think they were allowed to do that. And it's really bad news. And that pulls on the
They said it says police on those uniforms.
Well, then it's a lie because they're not police. So they're federal agents. And Pazzi Comitatus says the feds cannot be police. And then that pulls on the thread that was in Portland where they had unmarked federal agents pulling people. Oh,
that's what I mean, Portland.
Streets.
I was referring to Portland, yeah.
Yeah, this one it was the Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot, said she spoke with the mayor of Portland to, quote, get a sense of what happened there. And Lori Lightfoot said, we don't need federal agents without insignia taking people off the street and holding them, I think, unlawfully. Now, the problem with not having insignia is you can't find your people. So if you're with somebody and they drag him away, and they call it alphabet soup. There are so many agencies, and basically almost all of them, if not, half are armed and dangerous. These government agencies, they're federal, they're state, there are local, there are private ones even. If they're not wearing insignia, you may never be able to track your people down. And that's very dangerous.
They did a press conference yesterday speaking specifically about the uniforms. I didn't catch all of it.
Oh, really?
And they spoke about the insignia. I need to go back and watch it again.
Well, it's whatever the actual... what is really happening, I don't know. But the fact that she's sounding the alarm about it, it is an alarm that should be sounded. And of course, it's having these police. So I've been talking about the bills that defund the police and then you insert police funding from the feds with strings attached. Both parties want that. This is another step, which is taking various federal proxy police, quasi police, and inserting them in these cities without communicating with the local governments. That is also really dangerous. If I want to protect my homestead and I move to Texas or wherever I think homestead protection is strong, and feds, that was a slippery slope that the feds encroached on the 10th Amendment when states were changing their pot laws. So places that were trying to go legal, like California, were getting federal raids. So this is a problem you cannot control. We have no control over DC, and they are taking total control over the localities. And that is a problem.
And the Homeland Security officer, Chad Wolf, who was doing the press conference speaking about what's going on in Portland, because there was a top Twitter trend yesterday that was about proactive policing in Portland. Minority Report is going on. They're sweeping away protesters in the dark of night in unmarked cars, and everybody better watch out. First of all, I said, watch out. They are going to arrest people because you think you're free. You think you're emboldened to do all these protests, to commit all these crimes, and people are committing crimes. You're going to get arrested. And yeah, there are drones watching, all kind of stuff. And there is predictive programming, predictive policing going on. But the way that this was characterized yesterday, this predictive or proactive policing was completely out of context on Twitter. You couldn't hardly find a clip of the guy who was on Martha McCallum's show talking about this. You could only find the 11-second clip, really, that showed up first, where he says proactive policing, but no context around it. I finally found the entire video, and I watched it. And what he was talking about is the protesters were on a nightly basis at midnight. Not the protesters before, but the rioters that were coming from midnight to 5 have been committing crimes on a federal building. They've been graffitiing the courthouse. In Seattle, people died in this because there was no police that came to them. And here, there's no local police doing anything. The local police have backed up. They're not doing anything. And he talked about how we usually fall back and the local police does this, but the local police is doing nothing. They're vandalizing the federal building. They are attacking officers. So we are being proactive about actually going in there since there's no local authorities. He was talking about arresting people that had committed federal crimes. And to give you an idea of some of the things that the protesters are doing, they're using radio frequency jammers. You might remember the video of the old man protester who got pushed down by the cops. You slow down that video, he swipes his phone by a very intentional act by the thing. And I read where that was exactly this, using radio frequency jammers. I don't know if that's the case, but this seems to kind of lend some credibility to that claim. And they had soft pellet guns they were shooting the officers with. They were pointing lasers in the officers' eyes, and they attempted to lock officers inside the courthouse and burn the courthouse down with the officers inside of it. So they're committing felonies. The whole thing is messed up. I agree with you that this is a transfer of power, though, from the state to the federal.
And the fact that they're cutting that clip just to make the cops seem super coppy is a way to keep the rank and file, the people who aren't showing up at 2 a.m. Why are they doing it at 2 a.m? So the other protesters don't know how completely out of control it is. And then you have this guy sounding like a total a-hole, and that keeps a kind of body of American citizens on that side of the issue galvanized, so that then they'll bring out what you just brought out. They'll bring that out later, and everybody will come together and say, you know what, we just need to restructure this, refund it, and they'll bring it all together. I have a ton of stuff for the Patron 15 as usual. usual, I want to address what Trump said about illegal immigrants in the census. I have strong things about that. I hope I have time to tell you the story about the judge whose son was killed and husband was wounded. That is some kind of story that goes deep and even includes someone in a documentary called The Red Pill. So you're going to want to listen to that up next.
Interesting. And I have some interesting updates in the Ahmaud Arbery case involving one of the suspects, as well as some news about the George Floyd case. So we'll talk about that as well. You guys can find your Drive Time News Blast every weekday afternoon at thepropreport.com or your favorite podcasting platform with the Propaganda Report podcast feed. If you want to access that extra content that we post every time we post a DNB, go to patreon.com/propaganda report and become a patron. We will talk to you in the Patron 15 or tomorrow.